it happens quite often. But so yeah, I was born in Bournemouth, but then when I was 10, I moved to Belgium. And my mother is German as well. So I was brought up sort of bilingually, learning English and German at the same time. And then in Belgium, I learned French, of course, partly at school, but also speaking to, my French friends and everything else. So that was interesting. And then later on, I went to university in the UK, and worked in the UK, but then afterwards moved here to Spain, and that's when I started my Spanish journey, let's say. So a bit of a mixture.
Welcome to English with Lewis. Let's go! Hello, 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 and welcome back to another native British English chit-chat with an expert teacher that I'm eager for you all to get to know. But yeah, first of all, let me know, where are you in the world? Are you in Spain, Italy, Portugal, India? I'm curious. So let me know in the comments where you are right now. And I hope you're absolutely buzzing to get started. I hope you're so excited to get started and learn some nice business English, phrasal verbs, English idioms, and to get to know our guest today. So Daniel, hello. How are you?
I'm fine, Lewis. How are you? Everything okay?
Yeah, everything's all right. I've had a coffee. I've had a tea. I've got a glass of water here next to me, so I will be hydrated for the duration of this call.
That's good. That's good. I was worried about that. And so that's good to hear that. It's good to hear
Always
that.
very important.
Yeah.
But, let's just get to the point. Let's cut to the chase. And Daniel, introduce yourself. Tell everybody who you are.
Okay. Well, thanks, Lewis. Yeah. Well, my name is Daniel Smith, which is super English surname. There you go. And I live in Spain. I've lived in Spain for quite a few years now. And I'm basically I got a strong following on LinkedIn, and I have my own business related to helping Spanish professionals with their professional communication skills and their English in general, and so yeah, that's how things have evolved over the years a little bit, and so yeah, it's been an interesting journey, let's say, and we're obviously helping lots of people communicate better in the business environment, So
Fantastic. You mentioned your name and your surname, Daniel Smith. It's very English, but
it is.
You were telling me before we started recording that, in fact, you've been in different places in Europe and you're not 100% English. So what is your story?
Yeah, that is true. It's kind of like it's a bit of a long story, so I'll try to keep it short. But yes, I was born in the UK in a place called Bournemouth, which is close to Southampton. Most people know Southampton, but not so many people know Bournemouth. Although a lot of people do go to Bournemouth to learn English. The number of people that I've kind of met just by chance, and they say, "Oh, I say I'm from Bournemouth," and they say, "Oh, I went there to learn English." And so yeah, it happens quite often. But so yeah, I was born in Bournemouth, but then when I was 10, I moved to Belgium. And my mother is German as well. So I was brought up sort of bilingually, learning English and German at the same time. And then in Belgium, I learned French, of course, partly at school, but also speaking to, my French friends and everything else. So that was interesting. And then later on, I went to university in the UK, and worked in the UK, but then afterwards moved here to Spain, and that's when I started my Spanish journey, let's say. So a bit of a mixture.
Yeah, you are the EU, or at least what was the EU. But no, We agreed we're not going to talk about politics.
That's right, absolutely, yeah.
I'd just like to highlight a nice phrasal verb that you used. You said that you were brought up bilingually. To be brought up is to be raised. You raise a child. You bring up a child. And I, unfortunately, wasn't brought up bilingually. I wish I had been. But for you, were there any challenges or difficulties having both German and English in the household?
I think it wasn't so much, at the beginning, you're not really aware that you're maybe a little bit different to the rest, let's say. I kind of, at the beginning, actually kind of just wanted to forget that element, because, when you're a kid, you just want to be exactly like everybody else. So I just, especially at that time when I was living in the UK. I was just wanted to be like every other sort of British kid, But then when I moved to Belgium, it kind of like I went to a European school, which was pretty much standard, that everybody was sort of one nationality, half this and half that. And so after that, I became quite proud about being sort of half English, half German. So it wasn't a challenge really, but I didn't see the benefit as a kid really until I really started sort of using my German in Belgium and having German classes and everything else. So then I really started to see the benefit, because I was sort of one of the better kids in the class with German. And so, well, in fact, to be honest, I wasn't very good at all at the beginning. That everybody was better than me, but I was able to catch up with them because I had that base, as a kid. So yeah. Otherwise, it would have been tricky, that's for sure.
Yeah, I bet it would have been really complicated, difficult, having to catch up to the rest of the group. Another phrasal verb is to catch up to the rest of the group, is like to reach their level. So you were a little bit behind, but then you caught up. And it's interesting with Belgium, and in particular Brussels, because it is a bit of a melting pot of different cultures, different nationalities. Of course, you have the European Union, the Commission, all of these things. And was that the reason why you were brought up in Brussels? Because your parents were working for these institutions?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Now, actually, my dad was a teacher, and he worked at the European School. Now, the European School are an interesting sort of social experiment, in fact. And you were saying that I was sort of representation of a sort of European, sort of representing Europe as an individual. And I think that's the kind of social experiment that they wanted to do at that time, and they still continue with that, is that they want to sort of, get people coming out that are very sort of open-minded and have, can speak many different languages and all that type of thing. So that was essentially, but my dad was actually, the reason we went to Belgium in the first place was because my dad was a teacher, and he actually taught at the school that I went to. So that was a really quite sort of strange situation. I wouldn't recommend it, I have to say, but nonetheless, that's why we were there. So yeah. And the connection between European schools and the European Commission is that most of the kids that go to European schools are actually the kids of people who work at the European Commission or the European Parliament or whatever. So yeah.
I'm so jealous of all of them, honestly. When I'm walking around, because I live in Brussels and have done for the last couple of years, and I'm going for a little walk in the city center, or I'm going for a run, and then I overhear so many different languages, and you look at young children, and they all speak very good English, French, usually Dutch as well, or Flemish. And then you have plenty of Italian families from there, then in Central Europe, Eastern Europe. So it is really like the place to listen to so many different languages. And it's a little bit embarrassing that I moved to Brussels, I started studying French, and I was getting to a point where I could have decent conversations, taking classes and all of that. And then I realized, actually, none of my friends speak French. Like, they're usually Spanish people or other nationalities that prefer to use English. So I'm like always wanting to practice and use my French. But then if people already speak the other languages I'm good at, Spanish and English, and I'm like, God damn it, guys, give me a chance.
Yeah, that's so true. That's so true. I was lucky in Belgium because I did have a few French-speaking friends, and that really, I actually didn't like studying French at all at school. I hated it. I got always very bad marks in French, and so I really sort of had a very negative sort of impression of French because I wasn't good at it. But then because of these friends, I kind of really started to like French because I started to use it in the street, like literally go out and meet friends. And that's when my French started to really, move forward, so I was kind of,
Perfect. Now, you mentioned you're from Bournemouth, and you worked and lived in the UK a little bit before moving to Madrid. What did you do? What was your job back then?
Yeah, I did make a sort of major change in my life at one point. I went to university and I studied something called urban planning. and in Spanish it's called urbanismo. In Spain, it's kind of very much connected to the idea of architecture. So that's probably the best way to think about it. But it's the sort of planning of cities and future plans and how a city might grow, which is super. I found it's like applied geography essentially, which I really, really like because I like geography in general. And so I did that, and I studied in various different universities in Nottingham first of all, then in London, and then in Birmingham. And afterwards, I got a job in London in a multidisciplinary practice, and I worked there for quite a few years, 6-7 years, and I really, really loved it. It was really good. But in the end, I decided, okay, it's fairly corporate lifestyle. I think I prefer to sort of somehow have a bit more control over my life. And I thought, initially, actually, I just thought I would just have an adventure and sort of go to Spain and see what it's like to teach English. That's really, to be the honest truth, is that. But then later on, I had sort of other ideas and thought, well, maybe I could start my own business or something like that. That would be great. So that was the trajectory, really. Yeah.
Wonderful. And was it always clear that you wanted to go to Spain and to Madrid?
Well, I had made some really, really good Spanish friends. That's the real truth. I used to go to Germany every summer on what is called Europäische Jugendwochen, which is basically European Youth Weeks. Okay. And I used to love them. I used to do it every single year. And basically the idea is that you go and you meet, again, a little bit like the European school, where you go and meet loads of people from different countries. And because it was sort of advertised in German and normally in German, and you kind of had to know about it, that I was the only English guy who ever went. So I turned up and I was the only English guy. And that was really good because, I was like, everybody wanted to speak to the English guy, to practice their English, And so I loved that. And it also I was normally somewhere in Germany, so it allowed me to practice my German as well. And of course, because I went there were a number of people who also came from Spain. And it just turned out that the first year I did it, I kind of had a really good, nice group of Spanish friends. And that kind of influenced me. Yeah, that influenced me. And I thought, I think that was the start of the whole process. And then afterwards, I thought, well, I'd like to check out Spain. And I'd been a few times and I really loved it. So that was it. And of course, the climate, the weather and everything else was just like amazing, So, yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of things to like about living in Spain. And a lot of English teachers do live in Spain as well. And I think it's like the perfect blend and combination of you have professional opportunities. The weather's amazing. The food is incredible. And the whole hospitality sector is unbelievable. And then people are very open-minded, very friendly. It's cheap, generally speaking, perhaps not so much in Madrid, but in other areas.
Yeah, generally, yeah. I mean, I would say, although it depends exactly what you're talking about, it's true. But probably if you compare it to other places, some things are still cheap. Yeah, the cost of living maybe is a little bit cheaper. Yeah.
Thank God, right? With this, you moved to Madrid. You were in Spain. You were starting this new adventure. What was your first English teaching role like? How was that experience?
Oh, that was super interesting. Yeah, very, very interesting. Because, well, when you move to another country for the first time, you never really know. Well, you don't know what to do, or it's difficult to know what to do. And so I actually was reading a newspaper in England. I was kind of at home in England, reading the newspaper, and I opened up a page and it was like 10 things that you can do for free in Europe. Okay. So I thought, okay, what's this? And then looked down the list and I saw, oh, well, you can volunteer in Spain and go to what they called an English village, which is in Spanish would be Pueblo Inglés. And you can speak to Spanish speakers and basically you don't get paid, but they put you up in a nice hotel, like a 4 or 5 star hotel. So I thought, wow, that's perfect. That's kind of what I've been looking for. So I it's always kind of good to get a foothold or to know what you're doing rather than just go. And so I did that and I really loved it. Loved speaking with Spanish speakers. They told me all about their countries, learned so much about Spain. And at that point, I did that a few times. And then I thought, okay, I'm gonna try and live in Spain. And then I got my first job was working in a corporate sort of like a business, a big business in a place called Pozuelo, which is just on the outskirts of Madrid. And teaching executives, teaching executives in terms of their business English. And I really enjoyed that as well. I did that for a year. And so that was kind of the beginning process. But I quickly decided that I thought, okay, I think I would like to start my own business related to this, so yeah.
Okay. And just going over a couple of nice expressions you used, you said that at the Pueblo Inglés, the English village, they put you up.
Yeah.
If someone puts you up, they basically give you food, shelter, and they take care of you essentially. And
Exactly.
you also mentioned that this gave you a bit of a foothold in Spanish life, culture, people. If it gives you a foothold, it gives you a starting impression and a little bit of knowledge, so then you can go on and develop whatever you do after that. So interesting vocabulary. I like it.
Yeah. That's good.
And you wanted to become your own boss, which I think is something that resonates with many people. They always think like, oh, I'm tired of working for a company. I want to pursue my dreams. I want to be a big boss and start an incredible company.
Yeah.
Obviously, you were clear in what you wanted. You had already had previous experience. It sounds like everything was going well. But what were the hurdles that you had to overcome in order to set up your own business?
That is really interesting. Yeah. Probably just at the beginning, it was just the paperwork, let's say. In English, we also say the red tape, right? And that was a little bit difficult at the beginning, although I kind of needed to do that anyway, even to work for an academy. So here in Spain, you have to become autónomo, which is basically freelance. You have to become a freelance worker. And that was probably one of the biggest hurdles. But since then, that seems fairly simple, let's say. Since then, once you get really into the idea that you want to have your own business, then you grow a lot along the way, and you start to think, okay, how can I get clients? How can I connect with people? How can I do my marketing? How can I do the invoicing? There's so many questions that come along in this path, and you try to obviously work it out. And it's been a really amazing adventure. Because you never know exactly what the next challenge is going to be. And I think the reason I like it so much is that I'm continuously learning, continuously finding new things, trying to work out how to do things better. And I think that's probably why I like being my own boss. But I think probably it's also the kind of freedom that you get. Okay, so if I want to, I can go and do something else. Or I've got 2 kids, so also that really helps, that freedom. My wife doesn't have my wife has a corporate job, so I always wanted that flexibility so that I could go and pick up the kids, or that if the kids need help with something, or in the summer holiday, I can be with the kids. So for me, that was really one of the massive. I think that you can get financial benefits from having your own business, but also there are other benefits too. Of course, there are negative sides as well, because you have to depend on yourself. There's the buck stops at you. Essentially. So yeah, lots of positive and negatives, but overall, I would say many more positives for me than negatives. Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. And with all of these things, it sounds like you've got a good work-life balance at the moment, which can be difficult if you are your own boss, because usually people tend to get a little bit obsessive because, as you mentioned, the buck stops with you. So how do you kind of keep yourself in check and make sure that you don't become too much of a workaholic having your own company?
Yeah, that's a great question too. Yeah. I would say the kids probably help me mostly with that. They always kind of ground me. If I didn't have them and all the responsibilities that go with them, probably I would work a lot more, and I probably would be a little bit more obsessed about it. It's true that even then, I do think about it pretty much continuously, about how to improve it. How can I sort of extend it? How can we get more clients? How can we, well, essentially the idea is, and I think this is a nice way to think about a business, is not so much how can I get more clients or how can I earn more money? It's more about like, how can I help more people? And I think if you help more people, then essentially your business will naturally evolve and grow naturally. And I think if you think about it like that also, the emphasis is not so much on yourself, it's more about how you can be of use to others, you know. So that's the way I like to look at it, really. Yeah.
A nice little piece of advice there. For anyone wanting to set up their own company, to start your own company or go freelance, just reviewing a couple of these things, I hear a common mistake, which is people saying, I am freelance. So in English, freelance is basically the adjective. So you'd say, I am a freelance teacher. I'm a freelance worker. Yeah. Or you'd say, I am a freelancer. In that case, we're using the noun. So freelancer, noun, freelance, adjective, and it's used with another noun after it. And I said that was a great piece of advice, because if we say one advice, it is incorrect. That's right. Some lovely advice, or it's a great piece of advice. But moving on from that, your main following, as you mentioned, is Spanish-speaking professionals on LinkedIn. So how did this journey start of posting content and gaining a following on this kind of social media site, which is LinkedIn?
Yeah. There's an interesting story there a little bit as well, because I never, LinkedIn has evolved over time, let's say. And 10 years ago, it was a place where you would put your CV online. And really at that point when I started, it was still very much like that. You know, everybody had their CV online. But I did also notice that it was a place where not a lot of people were putting content. And so I thought I'd give it a go. You know, I heard a lot about it and I thought, people are doing a little bit more on LinkedIn. So I thought, okay, let's try it. And I tried it, and I can remember even sort of posting links to other sort of videos on YouTube, right? So I would just make a link to another video by somebody else on YouTube, and that was absolutely useless. And so I kind of did that a few times and then gave up. Then I thought, okay, I'll try again, and also didn't work. And then so I almost completely gave up until I was on holiday. I can remember we always go on holiday close to Alicante in Spain. And I can remember thinking, oh, well, instead of, linking to something else, I'll just write a common mistake that I've always heard, in my sessions, because I was, at that time giving a lot of sessions still. And so I wrote that and I kind of got 5 likes and I thought, oh, that's way more likes than I ever got in the past. So some people must like this, right? So, and then it's just the basic rule of whatever works, just keep on doing it, and that's basically what I've been doing since that point, just writing content that seems to resonate with people in terms of, common mistakes that they might be making in that sort of business environment sort of situation, and it's, so now I've got 250,000 followers. So it's worked well, and obviously keep on trying to work on that as much as I can. Yeah.
So exciting. And with these things also, you post and write everything mainly in Spanish, a little bit of Spanglish.
Yeah.
So it's clear who your audience is. But when you were first starting out, did you consider just writing everything in English, or was it always going to be based on Spanish speakers?
In fact, when I first started, I wrote everything in English. So it was actually written, everything was written in English, but it was very much focused on the mistakes that Spanish speakers made. So yeah, I mean, the focus was always going to be on Spanish speakers, partly because what I would do actually to think of these posts or whatever, I would be literally in a session with a client, and they would make a mistake and I would literally write the mistake down. And then
hold on, let me write it down.
Yeah, that's right. And then the next day I'd make a post about it. Do you know what I mean? So that's really, I got my best content ideas from my clients, and of course that resonated, because it's funny how sort of almost mathematical it is in terms of the mistakes that are made. If if one Spanish speaker makes a mistake, you could say that, well, quite a few other Spanish speakers are going to make that. I mean, like, it's difficult to know the numbers, but let's say the consistency of mistakes is almost uniform across people who are trying to learn, Spanish speakers who are trying to learn English. So
yeah, absolutely. And of course, we are always going to learn from our mistakes. So a nice little message to anyone is, if you're feeling a little bit embarrassed or nervous about speaking because you're worried people are going to judge you, well, just get that out of your head right now, because the only way you're really going to improve and become more fluent and more confident is from making mistakes, trying it out, seeing what works, and then you'll remember the correction. Because you will always learn from your mistakes. So we need to speak. If you're not sure how to say something, just don't worry, make it up, invent it, as they'd say. And then from that point, I'm sure you'll figure out exactly what it is you want to say and how you want to say it. But speaking about mistakes, let's review some common mistakes that we hear in our classes or your sessions. So I'll kick off and get started with one that I hear over and over again. And it is, I used to. In fact, this morning I was having level tests with clients, and this guy kept saying, like, yeah, at this job at the moment, I used to have meetings in English. And I'm like, oh, you're contradicting yourself. At the moment, so in the present, I used to, in the past. And the reason why people mix this up and get confused is because of the phrase to be used to. I am used to, which is to be accustomed to. So I'm used to making mistakes in English. Now we're speaking about the present. Whereas if you say, I used to make mistakes in English, you're speaking about the past, something that happened for a period of time that has now changed. So you can say, I am used to making mistakes, or it's easier to just say, I usually make mistakes. I often make mistakes. I normally make mistakes, with the present simple and an adverb of frequency. So that's one common mistake from my part. Daniel, the ball is in your court. Over to you.
Well, one common mistake that Spanish speakers make, and this is, to be honest, is quite connected to the business environment, I suppose, which is in many ways connected to those sort of standard business scenarios, right? So you can have emails, presentations, all that type of stuff. But today, I just share one with you, which is often connected to the idea of emails, right? And at the end of the email, you might want to say in Spanish, te confirmo, right? Now, in English, the common mistake that I hear a lot or see a lot is, I will confirm you. Okay, I will confirm you. Now, that sounds strange to a native speaker because it sounds as a little bit like, I don't know, something that is kind of like a confirmation, like when you go to the church almost, right? I will confirm you. It's like you're the priest who's confirming someone, right? But in this case, so you don't, although in Spanish, you actually use te, which means you. In English, we don't need that. We don't need that. So instead of saying, I will confirm you, you just say, I will confirm. All right. I will confirm, or I will confirm tomorrow, or et cetera, et cetera. So it's just one of those. And this is very prevalent, the idea that this sort of idea of direct translation, right? And it's sometimes also quite difficult to remove because our brain instinctively goes to sort of like a direct translation. And many mistakes are sort of brought about by that direct translation from one language to another. And that's the case in this one. So, it's not, te confirmo is I will confirm. You don't need the you at the end. So yeah, it's a little one, just a tiny one.
A little one, a nice little common one. And speaking about emails as well, it's commonplace to finish an email by saying, looking forward to meeting you, or I look forward to meeting you. Make sure in this case, whenever you use look forward to, that it's always followed by ing or, of course, a noun. So I look forward to speaking with you, or I look forward to our conversation. So that's another common mistake. specifically related to emails, but we can use look forward to in normal conversation too, to say like, I am excited. Like today, I'm going to go to the pub and have a pint. I'm looking forward to going to the pub and having a pint. So there we have 2 corrections from my end. Daniel, can you tell us one more?
One more. Okay. Yeah. It's interesting because I, through the whole idea of being on LinkedIn and in general, I try to help as many people as I can, obviously, and I provide a lot of advice, right? And so then I get a lot of emails from followers who say, "Oh, thank you very much for your advices." Okay, and this is the kind of a little bit like you were saying earlier, in fact, because you said a piece of advice, right? Or I can't remember exactly what you were, how you said it, but it's that whole idea of countable and uncountable, right? And in this case, in English, we don't say advices. We never say advices. It's just we say some advice. He gave me some advice, or he gave me a bit of advice. He gave me a piece of advice. So there's this temptation, especially from Spanish speakers, I think. But I think it's probably also one of those things that are tricky for anybody who's learning English in general. To say advices rather than advice. Yeah.
Excellent. Now, before we wrap it up and finish off, you have experience with languages, teaching languages, learning languages. I'm wondering if you're able to give our listeners and viewers any of your advice for improving their English or learning a language. I always say that you should try to immerse yourself as much as possible. And there's no one right way of improving a language, but what do you normally preach? How do you kind of recommend people improve their English?
Yeah, this is a really big topic. I mean, and it can be very much connected to mindset, and what you were talking about there is really mindset. I mean, you can, I think immersion is really good, like getting as much connection with the language as possible, I think is really fantastic. I think I'm very much, the way I learn a language is very much being a listener. Let's say I listen a lot, and then I like to be proactive in terms of trying to put it to practice as immediately, and not worrying too much about mistakes. I think I'm not that much of a worrier in terms of mistakes. I don't mind that much, but a lot of people in business context really feel very bad about making mistakes in that, which I absolutely understand. There are different contexts where making some mistakes you might feel worse because it's a more formal context. But if you can get beyond that, I think that's really where the true evolution happens, and that you really get, really focusing. I suppose the idea is really focusing on your message rather than anything else. So not looking for perfection, but focusing on your message and getting clarity. Okay, so that's really, really important. Once you've done that, we can sort of up the game and try to take you to the next level in terms of, additional vocabulary. You want, a lot of my clients, they're very perfectionist. So they really want to be almost as good as a native speaker, and that's fine. That's no problem. But at the same time, we don't want that perfectionism to stop you from moving forward. So yeah, clarity and focusing on the message, I would say, and then moving forward bit by bit to get your level even higher and feel more confident. Obviously, confidence is absolutely fundamental as well. Yeah.
Awesome. A lovely little nuggets, little tips, little bits of advice. Thank you so much, Daniel. It's been an absolute pleasure to get to know you more, and I'm sure people have really enjoyed this business English conversation using so many advanced words and phrases, speaking about languages, business, and so much more. So yeah, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
My pleasure, Luis. Great to be with you. Great to be with you. See you soon.
Awesome.
All
See you
right.
later, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Ciao, ciao. Bye. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, and see you next time.